I was half asleep when a notification on what I thought was my phone shattered my entire world in a single second. What I saw on that screen changed everything, and the way my husband tried to explain it away made it 1,000 times worse. My name is Tessa. I was 26 years old, married to a man I will call Grant, who was 32. We had been together for 5 years and married for a year and a half. And until that August morning, I had never once, not for a single moment, doubted his loyalty. Grant was the total package, at least that is what I believed. He was smart, funny, successful in the tech industry, and devastatingly handsome. The kind of man who made you feel like the luckiest person in the room just by being next to him. He made me laugh every single day. Our life together felt like something out of a romantic comedy, except it was real. Or so I thought. We were that couple. You know the type. The ones who finish each other's sentences and slow dance in the kitchen and post pictures that make everyone else feel inadequate about their own relationships. We had inside jokes that were so layered they needed footnotes. We had Sunday morning rituals and Wednesday night date nights and plans. So many plans, stretching out ahead of us like a road that went on forever. And I was 12 weeks pregnant with our first child. Let me say that again so the weight of it settles properly. I was carrying our baby, 12 weeks along. Just past the point where you start to relax a little, where you let yourself believe this is actually happening. I had been to the ultrasound. I had heard the heartbeat. I had started a secret folder on my phone of baby names, organized by gender, with notes about meaning and origin because that is the kind of person I am. Thorough, detail-oriented. The kind of person who plans ahead and believes that if you just do everything right, life will go the way it is supposed to. Life does not care about your plans. It was a regular Tuesday morning in August, the kind of morning that does not announce itself as anything special. Sunlight was coming through the bedroom blinds in soft golden lines. I could hear birds outside and the distant sound of a lawn mower somewhere down the street. Grant had gotten up to take a shower, and his phone was sitting on my nightstand. Our phones were identical, same model, same color, same ringtone. The only difference was our cases. His was black, mine was green. But in my half-asleep state, with my eyes barely open and my brain running at maybe 30% capacity, I did not notice the case. His phone chirped. A text notification. In my groggy confusion, I reached for it thinking it was mine. The screen lit up and I saw Mom had texted. Okay, I thought. My mom texted me. I can deal with that later. But underneath the text notification was a second alert. A notification from an app. It was from someone named Amber. I did not know anyone named Amber. In my still sleepy brain, I thought, who is Amber and why is she sending me a message? So I opened it. I need to pause here because I want you to understand the physical sensation of what happened next. You know that feeling when you are walking downstairs in the dark and you think there is one more step, but there is not, and your foot hits the floor with a jarring, stomach-dropping impact? Multiply that by 1,000. That is what it felt like. The image that filled the screen was explicit, extremely explicit. And underneath it was a caption that I will never forget no matter how hard I try. I want your tongue inside me again. 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 That word echoed in my skull like a gunshot in an empty room. Not I want. Not some hypothetical fantasy. Again. Meaning this had happened before. Meaning my husband had already been intimate with this woman. Meaning everything I thought I knew about my life was a lie. The room tilted. I am not being dramatic. The actual room seemed to shift on its axis, like the floor had been yanked out from under me while I was lying down. I could feel the blood rushing in my ears, a roaring sound like standing too close to a waterfall. My first coherent thought was, this is a mistake. She sent this to the wrong person. Because that is what your brain does when it encounters something that contradicts everything it believes. It reaches for the most benign explanation. It reaches for denial. But denial lasted exactly 3 seconds. I sat up in bed so fast my vision went spotty. My heart was slamming against my ribs. My mouth went dry. My palms were instantly slick with sweat. I was wide awake now, more awake than I had ever been, every nerve in my body firing at maximum intensity. I looked at Grant's contacts on the app. Next to Amber's name was a yellow heart emoji. My sister later explained to me what that meant. Best friends. They were each other's best friends on the platform. That does not happen by accident. That happens when two people send each other more messages than anyone else. Consistently. Over time. I could hear the shower still running. He was in there, maybe 15 feet away, separated from me by a bathroom door and a wall, and every second of that running water felt like a countdown. When he comes out, I will have to look at his face. I will have to decide what to say. I will have to figure out how to take this bomb that has just gone off inside my chest and form it into words. I did not snoop further. I did not go through his texts or his other messages. Not because I did not want to, but because I already knew what I would find, and the thought of seeing more was physically unbearable. The image was burned into my retinas. Every time I blinked, it was there. I set his phone down on the nightstand with trembling hands and sat there, staring at the wall, listening to the shower, and trying to remember how to breathe. When Grant came out of the bathroom, steam rolling out behind him, towel around his waist, he looked at me and immediately knew something was wrong. I must have looked like I had seen a ghost. My face was probably white. My eyes were probably enormous. I was sitting perfectly still in the bed, which is not how I normally wake up. I am usually a slow, gradual, need 2 cups of coffee before I'm human kind of person. Sitting bolt upright in bed before the coffee machine has even been turned on was a red flag in itself. "Hey, you okay?" he asked, tilting his head. His voice was so casual, so normal, so completely unaware that the foundation of our marriage had cracked right down the middle while he was shampooing his hair. "Fine," I said. My voice sounded foreign, too flat, too controlled. He gave me a look but did not push it. He got dressed, kissed me on the forehead, and went downstairs to make breakfast. I heard the clatter of dishes and the gurgle of the coffee machine, and I thought, he is making breakfast as if nothing has happened. Because for him, nothing has happened. He does not know that I know. The hours that followed were a masterclass in compartmentalization. I went through the motions of my day while my brain ran parallel processes. On the surface, I was functioning. I ate breakfast. I answered emails for work since I worked from home 3 days a week as a marketing manager. I moved through the house and interacted with Grant when necessary, each exchange feeling like I was performing in a play I had not rehearsed for. Underneath the surface, I was in full crisis mode. My mind was racing through questions. How long has this been going on? Who is Amber? How did they meet? Does she know about me? Does she know I am pregnant? Grant knew something was off. He kept asking me if I was okay, circling back every hour or so like a nervous satellite. "You seem quiet today. Is everything all right?" Each time, I deflected. I told him my sister was going through a hard time and I was worried about her. Which was technically true. My sister had just broken up with her boyfriend because he cheated on her. The irony was so thick I could have choked on it. I told Grant I was going to go to my sister's place for dinner and spend the night. He said okay, told me to give her his best, and went back to whatever he was doing. I packed an overnight bag with mechanical precision, got in my car, and drove to my sister's apartment. I cried the entire way there. 20 minutes of tears streaming down my face, knuckles white on the steering wheel, trying not to think about the image on his phone and failing spectacularly. At one point I had to pull over because I could not see the road through the tears. I sat in a parking lot of a grocery store for 10 minutes, hands on the wheel, gasping for air, while normal people walked by pushing carts full of groceries and living their normal lives. I put my hand on my stomach, on the tiny bump that was barely visible yet, and whispered, "It's going to be okay. I'm going to figure this out. We're going to be okay." I did not know if I was talking to the baby or to myself. Probably both. My sister, Nicole, is 20 years old and a force of nature. She is the kind of person who takes no nonsense from anyone and approaches problems like a general planning a campaign. When I showed up at her door with mascara streaked down my face and told her what happened, her first instinct was not to comfort me. It was to strategize. "We are going to figure out exactly who this woman is," she said, already pulling out her laptop. "And then we are going to figure out your next move." Nicole is a wizard when it comes to social media. Within 30 minutes, she had cross-referenced Grant's connections across multiple platforms and found a woman whose profile matched. Amber, whose real name I will not share, was listed as a receptionist at a law firm. Not just any law firm. The law firm where Grant's best friend worked as an attorney. Grant worked a couple of blocks away and frequently went there for lunch. That must have been how they met. Nicole turned the laptop toward me. "This her?" I stared at this woman's profile photo. She was pretty. Of course she was pretty. I hate that my first thought was to compare myself to her, but I am being honest, that is what I did. I looked at her face and tried to understand what she had that I did not, what she offered that I could not. The answer, of course, is that it had nothing to do with me. It never does. But try telling that to a pregnant woman who just found an explicit photo on her husband's phone. I did not sleep that night. Nicole and I stayed up talking, planning, crying, and sometimes just sitting in silence together. She wanted to go nuclear. She wanted to call Grant, call Amber, blast everything on social media, and watch the whole thing burn. Part of me wanted that too. The wounded, angry, betrayed part of me wanted to set his world on fire the same way he had set mine. But my mother's voice was in my head, as it always is during moments like this. My mom raised me to believe that you never accomplish anything with anger, that you can be emotional, passionate, upset, devastated even, without raising your voice. That messages received calmly are just as powerful as messages delivered through screaming. I had lived my life by that principle for 26 years. I was going to need that principle now more than ever. The next morning, I called my uncle. He is a lawyer, and while he works in general practice, the bulk of his caseload is divorce. I did not tell him exactly what was going on over the phone, just that I needed to discuss some potential legal issues, and it was urgent. He agreed to meet me that morning. My uncle's office smelled like old books and leather. He sat across from me behind his big oak desk and listened to the entire story without interrupting. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and said, very matter-of-factly, "If he has been unfaithful, we will take him to the cleaners." I nodded. I was not thinking about money. I was thinking about the baby. The meeting with my uncle gave me something I desperately needed: a plan. When you are drowning in emotion, having a concrete, step-by-step plan is like someone throwing you a rope. It does not make the water less cold. It does not make the current less strong. But it gives you something to hold on to, something to pull yourself toward. I spent the rest of that day at Nicole's apartment, going over everything with her. We made lists, pros and cons, financial calculations, questions for the lawyer, potential outcomes. By the time I left her apartment that evening, I felt something I had not felt since that morning. I felt prepared. Not good, not happy, prepared. And at that point, prepared was enough. That evening, I went home. Grant was in the living room when I walked through the door. He stood up immediately, and I could see the anxiety on his face. He knew. Maybe he had checked his phone and seen that the message from Amber had been opened. Maybe he could just sense the shift in the atmosphere. Either way, the pretense was over. I sat down across from him and I said, very calmly, "I need you to tell me who Amber is and why she is your best friend on that app." The color drained from his face so fast, it was almost cinematic. His mouth opened and closed twice before any words came out. Then the lies started. She was just someone who worked with his friend. They met when his friend invited her to lunch. She was really into fitness and sent motivational messages about healthy living. He barely knew her. They were only best friends on the platform because she was so active and he barely used it with anyone else. I asked if he had ever received anything inappropriate from her. He said, not on purpose. When I pressed him on what that meant, he got defensive, started raising his voice. And then he said the thing that made me snap. "I feel like I'm on trial here. People warned me that you would get crazy when you got pregnant, but I never thought it would be this bad." He blamed my pregnancy. He looked me in the eye, knowing that I had seen what I had seen, and he tried to gaslight me by blaming hormones. For 26 years, I have been a measured, rational, composed person, and this man tried to reduce my legitimate devastation to pregnancy crazy. I want to stop here and explain something about myself, because I think it matters for understanding what happened next. I am not a dramatic person. I am not someone who yells or throws things or creates scenes. I have always prided myself on being level-headed, rational, measured. My mother instilled this in me from childhood. She told me that the quietest voice in the room is often the most powerful, and I believed her. I built my entire personality around the idea that control is strength. But there are moments in life when control is not enough. When the injustice is so blatant, so breathtaking in its audacity, that composure becomes its own kind of violence. Violence against yourself. And in that moment, sitting across from a man who was blaming my pregnancy for his infidelity, something ancient and primal rose up from somewhere deep inside me and said, "No, not this. Not today." Something broke inside me. Not my composure, not entirely, but the lock I had been keeping on my anger. I did not yell, not exactly, but my voice carried a force that I had never heard from myself before. I told him I may be pregnant, but I was also an intelligent person and his wife, and I knew he was lying, and I deserved the truth. I asked to see his text messages with Amber. He said sure. The conversation was empty, obviously deleted. Then I asked to see his messages on another platform. His face, oh his face. He looked like a child caught with his hand in the cookie jar. He said no. I asked why. He started to cry. I watched him cry and felt nothing. No sympathy. No urge to comfort him. Nothing. This man who I had loved for 5 years, who I had married and built a life with and was carrying a child for, was sitting across from me with tears running down his face, and I felt absolutely nothing. That absence of feeling was more frightening than the anger had been. It meant something had died between us, and it had died in the space of about 30 seconds. He said he could not let me see those messages because they would hurt me, because they were inappropriate, because they were proof of everything I already knew. And then it all came out. Every ugly detail. He slept with Amber the very first night they met, in the back seat of her car, like teenagers, while I was at home, pregnant with his child, probably making dinner or organizing the nursery or adding names to my baby name folder on my phone. The affair had been going on since right before Christmas. Months. Through the holidays, through the parties and the family gatherings and the tree trimming and the New Year's kiss. Through the 12-week ultrasound where we heard our baby's heartbeat for the first time. Through all of it, he had been with her. And no, they did not always use protection. That detail hit me like a physical blow. I had just been screened for infections at my last doctor's appointment, but I would need to be screened again. Not just for my sake, but for the baby. The baby that he had put at risk because he could not keep his hands off a receptionist. I sat with that information for a long moment. The house was so quiet. I could hear the clock on the mantle ticking. I could hear the refrigerator humming in the kitchen. Normal sounds from a normal house on a normal street in a normal neighborhood, and none of it was normal anymore. My husband had been having sex with another woman for months, unprotected, while I was growing his baby inside me. Every time he came home and kissed me and asked about my day and rubbed my feet when they were sore and talked about baby names and what color to paint the nursery, he had been carrying that secret. Every single time. I thought about Christmas. I thought about us decorating the tree together, him lifting me up to put the star on top, because I could not quite reach even on the step stool. I thought about New Year's Eve, when we stood on the balcony and watched fireworks, and he held my stomach and said, "Next year, it will be 3 of us watching this." Had he been with her that same week? Had he held her too? Had he whispered things to her that he should have been saving for me? The images in my head were unbearable. I could not make them stop. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw things I did not want to see. My imagination was crueler than any photograph on a phone screen. I told him to leave, to go to a hotel, to go to Amber's place, to go anywhere that was not my home. He left. He did not argue. He did not beg. He just grabbed a bag and walked out the door, and the house was suddenly, crushingly silent. My mom and Nicole came over within the hour. They stayed with me that night. I sobbed into my mother's shoulder for what felt like days. My mom, who never cries, was crying too. Nicole sat on the floor next to the couch rubbing my back and whispering that everything was going to be okay, that I was going to be okay, that the baby was going to be okay. I was not sure I believed any of it, but I wanted to. And wanting to believe is the first step toward actually believing. So I let myself want it. I let myself imagine a future without Grant. A future with just me and my baby in our beautiful home, with my family close by, and my career intact, and my dignity untouched. That future looked different from the one I had planned. Smaller in some ways, bigger in others. But it looked real. And real was better than the fantasy I had been living in. In the days that followed, the numbness settled in. It is a strange thing, numbness. You would think it would feel like nothing, but it does not. It feels like everything, all at once, compressed into a weight that sits on your chest and makes every breath require conscious effort. I went through the motions. I ate because I had to eat for the baby. I slept because my body demanded it. I worked because the routine kept me from disintegrating. But underneath the numbness, something else was forming. Clarity. A sharp, cold, crystal clear understanding of exactly what my next 10 moves needed to be. I was not going to crumble. I was not going to beg. I was not going to let this man see me broken. I met with my uncle again. He confirmed what I already suspected. Given the evidence of infidelity, I was in an excellent position for the divorce. The house, which I had poured money and love and countless hours into making perfect, would most likely be mine. Grant's friend was an environmental lawyer and would be of no help to him in a divorce case. I would seek child support, but not spousal support. I did not need his money. I am a marketing manager for a major company. I work from home half the time. I am financially independent and always have been. Some people had suggested I consider ending the pregnancy. I understood why they said it. Having this baby would tie me to Grant for the rest of my life. It would make future relationships more complicated. It would mean co-parenting with a man who had betrayed me in the worst possible way. But I wanted this baby. I had wanted this baby since the moment I saw those two pink lines. I was going to be this child's mother, and that meant I had to be strong enough to raise her alone if necessary. I decided then and there that I was strong enough. I had no other choice but to be. A few days after the confrontation, I told my dad everything. We sat up late, just the two of us, and he listened to the whole story. When I was done, he was quiet for a long time. Then he looked at me with those steady, weathered eyes and said something I will carry with me forever. Weak people are afraid of strong people. Keep terrifying the weak ones. That way, the only people who won't fear you are the bravest and strongest, and those are the people who are worthy of you. Then he paused, and a hint of a smile crossed his face. And your husband is a spineless coward who couldn't keep up with the strongest woman in the world. I laughed. For the first time in days, I actually laughed. Not because it was funny, but because my dad had this miraculous ability to take the worst moment of your life and make you feel like a warrior instead of a victim. I want to address something that a lot of people asked me about. Some people suggested I should terminate the pregnancy. I want to be very clear about where I stand on that. I fully, completely support every woman's right to make that decision for herself. If my financial situation were different, if I did not have a support system, if I were alone in a way that made carrying this baby impractical or dangerous, I might have considered it. But that is not my situation. I am a marketing manager for a large company. I make a good salary. I work from home half the week. I have a mother who would move heaven and earth for me, a sister who has already volunteered to be the world's most enthusiastic aunt, a father who would fight a bear with his bare hands if it looked at his daughter wrong, and an uncle who is going to make sure I walk away from this marriage in the best possible position. I do not need Grant. I never have. The money was nice, the partnership was nice, the dream was nice. But I am not a woman who needs a man to survive. I am a woman who chose a man, and now I am unchoosing him, and I will be fine. More than fine. I will be extraordinary, because I have a daughter to raise, and she is going to learn by example that strong women do not break. They bend. They adapt. They endure. And then they come back stronger than before. The divorce proceedings began shortly after. I will not share all the details because Grant has likely seen this story, and I need to keep my strategy private. But I will tell you this. I am not angry anymore. I was for a while. The white-hot, all-consuming kind of anger that makes you want to set things on fire. But anger is exhausting, and I have a baby to prepare for. So I traded the anger for determination. I am determined to come out of this in the best possible position. I am determined to keep my home. I am determined to raise my daughter, because I know in my bones that she is a girl with strength and grace and the knowledge that she is enough, exactly as she is. Grant turned out to be a spineless, lying coward who could not even own up to his mistakes until he was backed into a corner. But he also gave me the greatest gift of my life, this baby, and for that, and only that, I will always be grateful to him. I am sitting by a pool right now as I share this story. The sun is warm on my little baby bump, and I am reading your comments, and I am feeling, for the first time in weeks, something close to peace. Not the old peace, the one that came from believing my life was perfect. A new peace, the kind that comes from knowing the worst has happened and you are still standing. My dad told me to be terrifying, so that is what I am going to do. Just a few days ago, I thought my life was as close to perfect as you could get. I had a handsome husband who made me laugh, a beautiful home that I had decorated with love, a baby on the way, and a future that looked bright and endless. And now I am sitting by a pool reading words of encouragement from strangers on the internet while preparing for a divorce I never saw coming. It is funny how quickly the ground can shift beneath you. How a single notification on a phone screen can divide your life into before and after. Before that morning, I was one person. After that morning, I became someone else entirely. Someone harder, maybe, but also someone braver. If my husband is reading this, and he probably is since he spends a lot of time online, I want him to know something. You did not break me. You cracked the version of me that trusted you, yes. But the version that emerged from that crack is made of something you never had. Integrity, courage, the kind of strength that does not come from being loved well, but from surviving being loved badly. Here is to a speedy divorce and a beautiful baby and a future that is entirely, completely mine. Subscribe for more stories. If this one moved you, if it made you feel something, leave a comment below and tell me about it. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. And remember what my dad said. Be terrifying. Be strong. Be the kind of person that weak people are afraid of. And never, ever settle for someone who is too weak to deserve you.